Hey, this is your girl, Treal Ravenel, and this video right here is talking about healing in your marriage. I know all too often there are issues and problems that arise in marriage, and sometimes you have no idea why it's happening, where it came from, or how long it's been there. But this video right here will begin to uncover some root causes, some things that you may have experienced in the past, or even now, that's now hindering the growth of your marriage. So check it out and let me know what you think.
Living now. This is living now.
Welcome to my YouTube channel. This is your girl, Treal Ravenel, Master Wife Coach, founder and visionary behind the Wives Who Win movement and the Husband and Wives Who Win Training Center. Just recently changed the name on Facebook. I'm so excited to be sharing with you guys and talking with you all things marriage. And I am just so excited about the series that we're on, talking about healing marriages. And one of my desires, my passion, that God has given me, is to help marriages prevent separation and divorce. You know, we often hear that marriage is hard, that marriage is work, that marriage is this and marriage is that. But what I do know is that if we apply biblical principles to our lives and to our marriages, it doesn't have to be hard. It doesn't have to look like or feel like work. And that's one of my goals in helping men and women be able to demonstrate biblical principles in their marriage so it can be smooth sailing. Now, that doesn't mean that everything will be peaches and cream. That doesn't mean that you'll never have adversity or challenges or things that come up against your marriage, because you have to think of it this way. In our individual lives, before you got married, you had adversity, right? You had challenges, you had opposition, you had things that you had to deal with that came to you full circle. And what I can tell you is that how you deal with those things as a single person is typically how you'll deal with those things as a married person. And if you're single and watching this is one of the reasons why I encourage you to be whole and be healed from the inside out prior to getting to marriage, and learning how to deal with conflict with, you know, your siblings, with parents, sometimes with enemies, with people that will come up against you and that will cause or create chaos and confusion in your life. Because the better you're able to deal with those type of situations, and even the enemy, right? Because he comes to steal, kill, and destroy. But we know that God comes that we may have a life of abundance. So even when he brings things your way, or when God tests you in any way, your faith is still strong and you know how to go through adversity without being knocked out and damaging your life or those relationships around you. So you carry those same behavioral patterns into your marriage. And that's one of the things that I love to talk about as it relates to healing, as it relates to behavior, as it relates to mindset, because all of those things need to shift and change and expand in your individual life prior to marriage, and even more so when you get into a marriage, because now you're two becoming one. So if you haven't already, please go ahead and subscribe to my YouTube channel. That should be right below here. Just click on that subscribe button so you'll get all the notifications. Anytime a new video comes out, you'll be notified of that. If you want something specific that you want me to share or talk about, please let me know. Let me know by putting a comment below or send me an inbox on Facebook. Treal Ravenel is where you can find me, or Wives Who Win. And also you can always email me at info@wiveswhowin.com, and I'll get that and I will pray about it and make sure that's something that needs to be shared. I know that healing right now is prevalent in the world, in society. And one thing I've said is that it's not that we lack, marriages lack love. It's not that marriages lack commitment. We see people that love one another, that are staying together. We see people that are committed to the marriage because they said yes, they're deciding to stay together. But just because you love somebody and you're committed to staying, it doesn't mean that it's the best situation for you. And that's what I found. I found that people are committed and they have love for one another, but it's not the best situation because there are other issues and other problems that they're still dealing with. And a lot of that is internal. And too often we look on the outside, we look at the issue on the outside, but we don't deal with what's on the inside. So although you may dress yourself up on the outside, you know, I can have on nice clothes, nice hair, nice jewelry, and all of those things, and I can have scars that I'm hiding right under the shirt, under these pants. So until we learn how to heal from the inside out, we'll never be able to have a healthy and sustainable marriage. And that's one of the reasons, many, why I'm on here. I'm talking to the general population of marriages, of those desiring marriage, because this is something that's necessary if you want to experience overall healing and sustainability in your marriage. Which brings me to our text that we're going to go into. So as I was thinking about what should I share as relates to healing from the inside out and healing marriages, what came to mind is that scripture where the woman in the Bible has the issue of blood. And I believe that's in the, if we go in the Gospel of Matthew, it starts talking about that woman that had the issue of blood. And I'm just going to read a little bit here off of my lesson here. And again, the scripture is Matthew 9, verses 20 to 22, and also Mark 5, chapter 5, verses 25 through 34, and then Luke 8, 43 through 48. Okay, so it says here, and a woman was there who had been subject to bleeding for 12 years. So here we see that there is a woman that was subject to bleeding for 12 years. So for 12 years, she had this issue of blood. Okay, she had suffered a great deal under the care of many doctors and had spent all she had. Yet instead of getting better, she grew worse. When she heard about Jesus, she came up behind him in the crowd and touched his cloak, because she thought, if I touch his clothes, I will be healed. Immediately her bleeding stopped, and she felt in her body that she was once freed from her suffering. At once Jesus realized that his power had gone out from him. He turned around and asked, "Who touched me?" Who touched me? You see the people crowding against you, his disciples said, and yet you ask, who touched me? So I'm kind of going more than I wanted to go, but I wanted to really talk about the issue of blood and the thing that this woman dealt with for an extended period of time. And that leads me to marriages. A lot of times, as I stated earlier, there is an internal issue. And what we attempt to do is deal with that internal issue on an external level. In the same way, this lady went to doctors, she went to all type of remedies, or sought out all type of remedies for her healing, when what she needed was Jesus. What she needed was to be able to connect with him. Here we see she touched the hem of his garment, but as it relates to marriage, a lot of times we need to connect with him by our relationship. And many times the marriage is lacking because there is a lack of connection to our source of healing, our source of sustainability, and our source of power, who is Jesus. So like the woman with the issue of blood and seeking out medical attention and things of that nature, a lot of times we seek out the world's attention. A lot of times marriages seek out, what is the world doing? You know, if the world has this issue, and they tried this, and this may have worked for them, maybe if I try that, if we try that, then it'll work for us. But I'm here to tell you, when issues arise in our marriages, in our life, we can't seek out the world's view or the world's remedies. We have to seek Jesus and his word. And so many marriages right now are bleeding internally because they're constantly trying to seek out an external remedy. So your internal bleeding may not have been caused, and more likely not have been caused, by your husband or by your wife. These are things that have been caused because you never took the time out to get healed from other areas in your life that has caused so much pain, that has caused so much sickness and so much atrocity and adversity in your life, and now it's causing that in your marriage. So in order for your marriage to operate in a healing capacity, that has to come from the inside out. So if you're on here today and your marriage is bleeding, meaning if you're going through constant up and downs, if there's constant adversity, if you and your husband or your wife are at odds with one another, if you're not able to get along, if you don't have healthy communication skills, if you don't know how to deal with conflict, it almost always ends up into a drag out argument, or unfortunately something physical. If you don't know how to praise one another and exhort one another, but instead you're tearing one another down by what you're saying and by what you're doing. If husbands, you don't know how to love your wives as Christ loved the church. Wives, if you have a problem with respecting and trusting and honoring your husband, then that means that there is a area of your marriage that is bleeding. And we have to find out why it's bleeding. Just like the woman with the issue of blood, she didn't know why she was bleeding for the 12 years. The Bible doesn't talk about what caused the bleeding, why, what may have caused it internally or externally. The Bible never talks about that. It just says that there was a woman that had an issue of blood and she was bleeding for 12 years. So we don't know when it started per se. We don't know if she was 15 when it started. We don't know if she was 20 years old when it started, but we just know it started. And for you, you have to find out what started the bleeding. Where did it come from? We have to be able to go back and trace the issue or trace the source of that bleeding. What caused me to start bleeding? What caused my heart to start caring? What caused my mind to start thinking a certain way? What caused my attitude to shift? What caused my mood to be like this? What caused the bleeding? If you're on here right now, ask yourself that. Say, what caused the bleeding? What caused the bleeding in my mindset? What caused the bleeding internally that now has me on a path in my marriage where I'm ready to give up, where I'm ready to walk out, because nothing is stopping the bleeding. The bleeding is causing hurt. The bleeding is causing pain. The bleeding is causing me, my husband, or me, my wife, to be at odds with one another. The bleeding is causing so much damage and so all things negative, right? It's causing all things negative. And I feel like if I just walk away, then the bleeding will stop. And what I want to tell you with that, although you may decide to walk away, the bleeding is not going to stop. It's only going to transfer to the next relationship, the next marriage, or whatever. That bleeding will always follow you. It will always be a trail behind you, because you never dealt with the issue. And that's the case for so many relationships and so many marriages. The issue is not dealt with. We have to deal with the root of the problem. We have to get down deep and see why, what caused this. And many of you on here, you may be tempted to say, well, my husband caused this, well, my wife caused this. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but that's not the case. They may have revealed what was already going on inside, right? But they didn't cause that. And that's exactly what marriage does. Marriage reveals what has been concealed the whole time. Just like the New Testament reveals what has been concealed in the Old Testament. Our marriages, when we connect with another person, and the entity of marriage, it only reveals what's already there. And I know that was my story, and that still is my story. I can't blame my husband for anything, honestly, because whatever's on the inside of me is what's going to come out on the external, and what's going to be prevalent in my marriage covenant. And that's why me personally, I work daily to make sure that I am working on myself inwardly. Now, do I make mistakes? Absolutely, yes. Is every day perfect? Absolutely not. I don't always get it right. However, I am very intentional to making sure that how I'm showing up on the outside is what I want to show up on the inside. So whether I'm putting on a facade or my representative and it looks all good and glamour to the world, I want to make sure that it is good and glamour, and that starts from the inside. So there is work that I constantly have to do, and one important thing I do daily is my spiritual relationship. I'm sure to pray and talk to God and spend time with him. Now, one day, some days maybe 10 minutes, another day maybe an hour. There's no set time frame, just depending on what I may have going on, and sometimes depending on laziness, just to be blatantly honest with you. And what I can tell you about that is, if I am lazy, or if I'm not putting in my due diligence, in my due time in spending time with my Abba Father, and having that personal meditation with him, and just having that one-on-one with my daddy, that shows up in my marriage. So if I'm slacking, when I'm slacking in that area, other areas of my life tends to slack. because I don't have that closeness. I'm not getting instructions and direction. I'm not going before him and asking him, Lord, what areas of my life do I still need to work on? I'm not being open and honest and having him to really pan out the details of my personal life, so that in my marriage I can show up differently. So if you are on here today and your marriage is bleeding from the inside out, I will encourage you to start working on you. Don't look at your husband, don't look at your wife as the problem or the issue. Now, they may bring some agitation, absolutely, because we're human people, right? We're human beings, so we're operating in our human strength and our human ability. However, they don't have that much human power over you to control the entire entity of your marriage covenant. And if you are constantly going through chaos and confusion in your marriage, I would submit to you to get some help. Get some professional help, go to counseling. If you need to, you can even contact me. I do coaching. I do marriage coaching and wife coaching, and I will help you and I will guide you through the word of God. But what I would tell you, if you decide to go to a counselor or a psychologist or come to me, you're going to have to be committed to doing the work. And one of the things that we all will tell you is that you have to first acknowledge that there's a problem, and then you have to identify the root cause of that problem and trace the root of that pain, of that hurt, of that bleeding source. Trace that bleeding source, and then you have to be committed to healing. And a lot of that may take, forgiveness of yourself, forgiveness of somebody that may have violated you, betrayed your trust, or healing and forgiveness of somebody that may be your husband, that may be your wife, that may be somebody else. But there's some work that has to be done, and the only way the work can be done is if you are honest with yourself and where you are and where you desire to be, and if you're committed to doing the work. So I pray that this broadcast has been a blessing to you. Please leave comments below. Let me know if it has blessed you. Share with anybody that need to hear this message. Even if you're single and some of your single male friends or female friends need to hear this message, because there's some things that happen in their life, and undoubtedly that there's some healing that still needs to take place before they decide to get in the marriage. Please do share this with them. It's easier and less costly to do preventative and maintenance work than it is to do repairs and to replace. So we want to make sure that we're doing preventative work, and part of that is listening to broadcasts such as these and getting educated and learning how to heal from the inside out and what you need to do with your individual life. So before you get into a committed relationship such as marriage, you can bring more to the table than just a whole bunch of drama, right? So until next time, thank you so much for watching my channel, and I'll see you soon. Bye. Be blessed.